Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jake Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Could you tell us a little bit about g.tec, the Amplifier, and then give us a little background on yourself?
So g.tec is actually building brain-computer interfaces. So we do all the hardware and software components, development, production here in our company. And these brain-computer interfaces are able to recognize different thoughts, so things from the brain. We can do it non-invasively with sensors on the scalp, but we can also implant sensors directly on the cortex or stick electrodes inside the brain for getting more resolution. And with all these brain signals, we are able to control external devices, and they are used for many different applications. So people do different neuroscience experiments, they develop new brain-computer interface applications, they monitor pilots and car drivers, so whatever they have in mind. We use it also for a couple of medical applications. It's useful, for example, for the neurorehabilitation of stroke patients or people with multiple sclerosis. And even many years after the stroke, they get better if they train with the brain-computer setup, because it's producing neuroplasticity, and this leads to better fine and gross motoric skills, less spasticity, and much more.
So the hardware, is it an amplifier? Let's just say a new tech gets in the field and they say, "Oh, I want to learn more about g.tec." In simple terms, is it more than an amplifier? It's the computer. It's everything. The software. It's all together. Can you simplify it a little bit?
So a brain-computer interface consists, of course, also of an amplifier, but you need much more. First of all, you need electrodes to pick up signals from the brain, these voltages. So we are measuring basically voltages from the EEG data. And they're very tiny. That's the reason why you need a biosignal amplifier to amplify it. And then we need analog to digital converters to have a digital data stream. And this data stream normally goes to any computing system. And with that, we can process brain signals and can extract useful information. If you're just looking at the EEG data, it looks like noise. So it's very difficult to read anything out which is meaningful. But with the brain-computer interface classification, we can extract useful information, and then we can use it, for example, to move a cursor on the screen, left and right, up and down, just to control something. You can also do neurofeedback applications. This is what Jay is doing very often. And you can also connect it with other devices, for example, a functional electrical stimulator. So this is what we use for neurorehabilitation. In this case, we ask a patient to imagine, for example, a left-hand movement. The brain-computer interface is able to pick it up that now the brain is doing this kind of imagination. Then in real time, we are able to trigger the functional electrical stimulation of the left arm so that the hand is really moving. This pairs mental processes with motor behavior. This is just very effective for neurorehabilitation and producing neuroplasticity.
Dr. Marie Swingle, welcome to the show. Say hello.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm half here, just so everybody knows, but really happy to be here, just off of a bad flu. So, but I wouldn't want to miss this for the world. You're a wonderful guest. So, yeah.
So now Jay's not here yet, so I'm going to bring up Neuralink because he gets pretty excited when we bring up Elon Musk. And does g.tec, is it similar to Neuralink with their implants, or how is it different?
That's a customer of us, because we are providing tools for many other companies, research institutes and universities, hospitals, and so on. So we are building elements that other companies and researchers are using to do something else. The main difference of Neuralink is that they are building an implant. So this is something that stays inside the head or inside the brain for a long time to extract information. What we are doing is something that doesn't stay inside. So we assemble electrodes and the BCI system on the surface of the body. So you don't need a neurosurgeon. You don't have to open the scalp to put it in. And for many, many applications, this non-invasive approach is just very nice and you can achieve a lot. For other applications, you need brain implants. So if you are looking at paralyzed people, and if you want to give them an exoskeleton to move along, then of course it makes sense to have an implant for communicating with the exoskeleton all the time, because you don't want to put on a BCI system in the morning. It's just very nice if you already have an implant ready to work all the time.
Jay Gunkelman, say hello to Kristoff.
It's good to see you again, Kristoff.
Nice to see you again. Long ago.
Yeah, it's been too long.
Jay, how do you know Kristoff? g.tec came up on a show 3 or 4 episodes ago, and we said, hey, we got to bring him on. What's your relationship with g.tec and Kristoff?
Well, he comes out of Gert Furtscheller's laboratory, and that's a technical university, and he's brilliantly executed into commercial product all of the intellectual property, basically the idea of communicating with locked in borderline cognitive people, the brain-computer interface work that came out of Berbaumer and Europe, and with the quality of the products at an exemplary level. So I was impressed with his devices and invited him a couple of times to come over as a vendor. I have to say, his booth didn't really get much attention. You know, the industry's got classical people that have booths, and they dominate the traffic there. But the few people that did stop by, I think John LeMay, for instance, stopped by and had some dramatic interest. But I also have perhaps an odd fascination with knives. And Kristoff, you remember the EEG pattern that was done by Gert Furtscheller when he was imagining cutting bread with a bread knife, and that bread knife was then executed as a product that was available, I think, only briefly, and you could actually get a bread knife with the EEG pattern on the blade. And it's a tungsten and vanadium and 200-year-old olive handle. And you have to be careful with these sorts of things because this is razor sharp. Now, Martijn Arns stopped and visited a few years ago, and he actually touched the blade with his fingers. Now, if you have a fine blade, you don't touch it with your fingers because you leave a fingerprint. So I have his fingerprint on this knife. If anything ever happens to me and you want to frame him, use the knife. So anyway, I appreciated
a nice sweet joke about that would be a really good Christmas gift, but not anymore.
Well, you know, it wasn't cheap, but I have the story behind it and the execution of it as a fine collectible basically was beyond what I could pass up, and I
I got the first one that came up for sale from them. I think they only made 10 of them, if I recall. But that also was part of my connections to g.tec and Kristoff.
Actually, we are running the BCI ward now for many years, and
yes,
we only give
yes.
the knife nowadays to the first, second, and third place winner of the BCI award. So that's the only chance to get the knife nowadays.
Ooh. And how many people put out an award for BCI? His company has an academic's heart, as opposed to someone trying to optimize some profit off of something. His products are all fabulous executions, and if you've got a child who you think has some consciousness and they're in a coma, who do you call? Ghostbusters. I mean, you've got to have some ability to end up having a science-based ability to investigate whether there's a cognitive presence or not. And I think you call it a beagle, to sniff out consciousness like a good dog might. But the products are exemplary and at a very high level. I mean, brain-computer interface. First of all, Musk is starting to do that, and his recent escapades with the monkeys didn't turn out very well with the implants. So I'm not going to stand in line for one of his. But there are competent people doing implants of various sorts, and probably less traumatically, given the death of the rather tragic, awful deaths of some of the monkeys. So he's received FDA approval to start, but I don't know if I would line up in that line yet. I recommend brain surgery highly if you need it, but you've got to be very careful. And the more traditional laying down of a surgical grid, or the rolling out of a surgical grid, or some people that are kind of floating nano amps in that are fired up using ultrasound to power them up. There's a lot of ways that people are getting electrodes into the brain, and as Kristoff points out, having them in there is a lot more convenient than having to paste them on every morning. And if they can be done safely and securely, and it looks like that's quite the case. Berbaumer has done work from outside the skull that ended up having some critique. His record keeping wasn't perfect, but he's executed it now with implanted electrodes, and the ability to go speech, thought to speech, is there with implanted high density arrays. So yeah, my interaction with Kristoff is one of high level of respect for somebody who actually went through academics. I mean, I'm just a damn tech, So he's the real thing, a major neuroscientist, and he's generated some of the world's finest products.
Jay and Kristoff, if you could help me out understand, because I'm sure there's techs out there, there's neurofeedback practice owners out there that are trying to pick a product, and I'm just trying to get where g.tec falls in. My perception is it's a high quality product, if you're going to do something for a living and you want to make sure you have the right signals coming in, coming out, that this is the top of the line product out there. Am I looking at that right, Jay and Kristoff?
Yes, I would say that it's a top of the line product. And it's not like one product. I mean, this isn't just, oh, I've got an EEG amp and some software.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of different approaches. The Sahara dry sensor or wet and dry, damp or dry sensor approach, and then traditional, 64. 128 high density array amplifier banks. All of those kinds of products are there in a broad product line. So it's not just one thing. But again, I think some of the unique ones that have been developed that bring the intellectual property off of the European academic centers and into a product line end up being extremely impressive. Brain-computer interface was not a U.S. neurofeedback world development. This basically came out of Europe, and Kristoff is, I think, trying to foster that by having an annual kind of a hackathon, how to do brain-computer interface thing. So, and I have to say, that's a 650 euro knife as a prize. That's a damn nice prize. He's drawing in bright young people into the field, and the term brain-computer interface is able to be swapped out for neurofeedback in many application areas, but it transcends the traditional neurofeedback clinical applications because it can be used for brain-computer interface for operating the computers for people that have lost function, and obviously exoskeletons operated for people that have lost peripheral functions.
I'd like to jump in there if I could. Kristoff, we have an extremely broad audience from, parents curious about neurotherapy, newbies, all the way up to extreme experts looking for the next thing, with knowledge wanting to jump in. To me, one of the obvious applications of your technology is with stroke. Do you mind walking us through, whether it's your equipment, your protocols, applications, etc., and if that's not the right topic, stroke, could you pick another just to kind of pull us into what you and your equipment do, and how it could be useful to mid-range or upper range practitioners?
I start maybe at the beginning. So we were established 25 years ago, right after my PhD. So during my PhD, people were asking if I'm selling this technology, and then I just founded g.tec, and the first system went to University of Oxford, the second one to South Korea, and I forgot actually the third one. But at this time, we produce biosignal amplifiers, like you were mentioning before. And then we just built more of these amplifiers. We had, for example, the first wireless EEG amplifier on the market, which is very nice because then you don't need cables anymore, and the whole set is sitting on the head, and it just gives you much better EEG data. And for that reason, you get also higher classification accuracies, higher performance for the BCI system or for all the EEG experiments. And then we built also amplifiers that go up to 1024 channels. So this was initially done for implants. When neurosurgeons are implanting grids directly on the cortex, then you get a fantastic resolution and you can learn much more of the brain. We work together with many neurosurgeons and neurologists. One of them is Dr. Kamada in Japan. And they want to understand, for example, which brain regions are essential for a patient, and they don't want to resect these regions, of course. And with brain-computer interface technology, we can actually figure out where these regions are located very quickly. And this helps understanding the brain much better. And there was one region, for example, on the base, temporal base of the brain, which was always active. And Dr. Kamada was also cutting it out because they assumed that it doesn't have a certain function. And then we did some BCI experiments. So we showed images to the patient and of faces actually, and this was the instruction to stick in and out the tongue. And suddenly the temporal base lighted up. So there was brain activity when the person looked into a face. So we figured out this is the face sensitive region of the human brain. And it has the consequence when you cut it out that the patients don't recognize family members or other faces anymore. This was in the region which was just unexplored or unknown before. So Dr. Kamada resected it, and now with BCI technology, he can figure out where these regions are located. So it's very useful for different research applications, but you need a lot of electrodes. And a couple of years later, we started also with stimulators. So we can stimulate different body parts to create movements or a sensation, but we can also stimulate the brain to create sensation, feelings, movements, and so on. And with this combination of sensing from the brain and stimulating different body parts, we are able to run neuromodulation experiments. This is just getting much more interesting because you can influence the brain and produce neuroplasticity. This is what we are nowadays using in a medical product. It's called recoveriX. This is our brain-computer interface for stroke neurorehabilitation. So in this case, we ask a patient to imagine left-hand movement, right-hand movement, leg movement. The brain-computer interface picks it up because we have electrodes over the sensory motor cortex, and we can do this in real time. And then we trigger the functional electrical stimulation of the left muscles, the right muscles of the leg muscles, so that the hand or the foot is really moving. And this pairs cognitive processes with motor behavior. And it's producing this neuroplasticity. And if we look at children, then we know that they need about 6,000 repetitions to learn to walk. That's the reason why we are also doing with our stroke patients 6,000 motor movement imaginations in total. And this allows the brain to rewire. So the damaged neurons are replaced by healthy ones. So the neurons form new connections. And at the end, we get much better motor control. So people walk faster. They have less spasticity. Temperature control in the limbs gets normal. And then we have also fantastic side effects, which are all good. For example, concentration improves, memory functions improves. And my favorite one is that people speak better. So the stroke damaged, for example, Broca's area. That's the region responsible for finding words. And if you look at the auditory cortex, then you need, or at the language network, then you need, first of all, the auditory cortex to hear conversations. Then you need Wernicke's area to understand the words. Then you need Broca's area to give an answer to the question that somebody was asking you. And finally, you need motor mouth region to move your lips and tongue and so on to pronounce the word. And with recoveriX, our brain-computer interface, we are activating with the motor movements, the sensory motor cortex, and lips and the tongue are also there located. And with that, we have an effect on the whole language network. And that's the reason why suddenly people speak much better. So we had patients who could only say one word, like yes, no, okay, and this was it. And after the recoveriX therapy, they could say sentences. And this is just also very nice with these neuromodulation setups to probe the brain and to see what you can influence. The other product in the medical domain that Jay was already mentioning is the Mind Beagle system. So in this case, we use a brain-computer interface for people with disorders of consciousness. So they're a little bit better than coma, but they don't move, they don't speak, and nobody knows if these patients can follow conversations. And you have to imagine family members, they are visiting maybe every day, but they never get feedback. So they have no clue if the patient understands them. With the MindBeagle system, we can probe that very easily. And we are just asking questions to the patients where we know the answer, like, are you born in the US? Then with the brain-computer interface, he can say yes or no. And when the patient is able to confirm most of 10 questions, then we get a very objective proof that the patient was able to follow conversations. And this is changing everything, because suddenly physicians are motivated to do something, family members are motivated to come in. So it's really important. And the last product line that we established a few years ago is our Unicorn Hybrid Black. This is actually a low-cost brain-computer interface. Costs around 990 euros, so much cheaper than the other technology. And with that, we are also running our BCI hackathons worldwide. And this is very nice because we are bringing makers, engineers, neuroscientists, neurologists, and even neurosurgeons into the BCI domain. So they are meeting over a weekend. We put them together in teams so that we have a mixture of experience, and then they have to work for 24 hours on new applications. It's just fantastic what they nowadays can achieve within 24 hours. They are coming up with very sophisticated new ideas, and they are really working in real time. So if we compare to the results 5 years ago, then it's just progressing dramatically. And they have ideas, for example, to visualize dreams. So one of the hackathon team, for example, is sleeping, they record EEG data. Then there's a computer graphics expert in the team. And based on your sleep patterns and different brain regions that are activated, they can produce, for example, computer graphics, which is also representing ideas. Or they hooked it also up to ChatGPT. So they read out EEG signals, put it into ChatGPT or daily. Then they can create nice images with artificial intelligence.
Nightmares?
You can also extract nightmares if you like. And with these BCI hackathons, we are creating a lot of dynamics. So this year we organized the BCI and Neurotech Spring School, and we had almost 16,000 people attending from 107 countries of the world. This just shows how big BCI and neurotechnology became.
Thank you. More than innovative. I really appreciate your taking us up and through.
Kristoff, you brought up the dreaded ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. How has that aided you and your company? How can it help people that are looking to improve their mental health?
Yeah, we are extracting biomarkers from the EEG. So first of all, we take care that we extract information which is solid and from proper brain centers and induced by proper experiments or certain tasks that they have to do. Then we can put these biomarkers into ChatGPT and ask them to interpret it. And what we get as a result is really fascinating. So it's valid. And in this way, you can also organize different experiments very nicely and interpret it. And we also work together with artists. And then we can also create paintings, for example, based on EEG data, which are inspired by different activations of specific cortical areas. And it's really nice what you get out. And at the end, BCI systems are they're using machine learning for many, many years, because by just looking at the EEG data, it's very difficult to understand what you are seeing. You need anyhow signal processing and machine learning to make sense of what you are seeing. And when we look again at the stroke patients that we have in the rehabilitation center where I'm sitting, so we just established our own Reha center where we started with recoveriX treatments. We did already more than 30,000 treatments. So just from this single center, we have 30,000 data sets. And nowadays, we can already predict how much better a stroke patient will get when he is doing 25 recoveriX treatments. This is very useful. An insurance company, for example, is much more likely giving you money for the treatment if you can prove the outcome, or you have a good statistics that tells the insurance company what you can expect when they pay. And this is also enabled with artificial intelligence and the deep learning algorithms that we have.
Kristoff, when you are talking about, dreams, etc., have you worked at all with schizophrenia, or do you see any use in exploring schizophrenia with your technology?
We didn't work on that, but we have customers using our equipment for exploring that. But for every single illness, you can spend your whole life. So we did so far coma, epilepsy, tumor, stroke, and multiple sclerosis, and ALS locked-in patients, of course. And now we are starting with spinal cord injury. So we had also our first spinal cord injury patient few weeks ago who was trained with recoveriX, and even this guy is walking twice as fast as before. So it was incomplete spinal cord injury, but nevertheless he improved a lot. But of course every single one is very interesting, but you need a lot of resources and knowledge to do it correctly.
We all know that, no worries. I think sometimes knowing our limitations is really important, but hearing what you were sharing, I think if anybody is out there wanting to explore, I think you might have something there in terms of looking at what areas of the brain are lighting up under the wrong circumstances. So, yeah.
It's also interesting to keep the perspective. You can see the dramatic progress in the high level neuroscience that Kristoff and his company and his products represent. This is an international, and you see his work is not just in his hometown. I mean, there's international locations all over are using this. The neurofeedback practitioner working in their office in the USA, in a state that's a small state, doesn't feel the ground shifting under their feet like it actually is. The field and the depth and the level of expression of the science that we're based on is just exploding. This is not a US-centric circumstance. You look across the world and you see high-level work coming out of all the other locations. And luckily, we see neurofeedback groups starting up in Spain and in Italy, and in Europe.
They've more than started up. I want to really pump what Jay is saying. In many cases, they've far advanced us.
Yeah. But it's an internationalized circumstance, and again, the practitioner needs to see the extent of the exposure our field is having internationally, and the high level, solid academic neuroscience that has been rolled out into clinical application. So I'm happy to see Kristoff on the show as a teaser for some of the people to see where the field has gone and is going. Sometimes I think Kristoff may have come over to the United States meetings only because they happened around ski season. And there was,
I understand.
there was some good powder somewhere, but I do think that our field needs to be broadened in its awareness, and this is the kind of exposure that ends up stretching their idea of what we do and what we can do with neuroscience applied.
So what we
Christoph,
also established is a kind of a franchise system for recoveriX to enable, therapists just to get all the neurotechnology from us. So we already have a lot of franchise partners in many countries of the world. And ideally, one franchise partner opens a couple of locations to take over a whole territory. So we have, for example, a company running recoveriX in Slovenia, the business lady here in Austria. So she established many locations already in Vienna, Graz, Klagenfurt, and many other locations in Austria. And at the end, we want to have a coverage of recoveriX centers so that no patient has to travel longer than 30 minutes to get the therapy. And for the therapists, we are just providing all the technology that they need, a standard operating procedure, and the marketing material, the web page, and then they can already start to treat patients. So at the moment it's stroke and multiple sclerosis, but I guess pretty soon we will be able to add other illnesses because we have clinical studies running. And in this way, somebody can start with BCI technology very, very quickly. And also from the investment point of view, it's pretty attractive to get it running. And this could also be very nice for a neurofeedback therapist because it just opens also other therapies that you can do with patients.
Kristoff, where do we send people to learn more about g.tec?
A good source is, of course, g.tec AT, and for recoveriX, recoverix.com. And if somebody is interested in the consumer products, it's unicorn-bi.com. And on the recoveriX web page, there's also much more information about the franchise system and how this works. And of course, very easy is also to follow my LinkedIn account, Christoph Guger, because I share a lot of videos all the time, like pre and post recoveriX videos, and then you can just see what we mean with BCI treatment improvement. And it's just fantastic, when we get a chronic stroke patient to move again. So we are testing, for example, with the 9-hole PEC test. And then you can just see the movements before the recoveriX therapy and after 25 sessions. And we have also patients who are coming more often, and then you see it after therapy 50, and suddenly the hand is healthy again. So you don't even see anymore that this person had a stroke 5 years ago. So you will see easily these videos on LinkedIn and many other applications like the sleep, dream painting, and whatever we do.
Yeah. The traditional view of a stroke is that with therapy, you get about 6 months out from the stroke, you get back about everything you're going to get back. And after that, that's about what you've got. And what you're doing is taking people from that point where they haven't really recovered fully at all, and bringing them past what's normally expected using a high-level neuroscience approach and stimulation and and feedback. So I'm absolutely impressed with the high-level clinical application. I hope your franchising system ends up penetrating a lot of the markets because the clients are out there in need. And obviously my 7-month-old Ridgeback is settling onto my lap here. So during the day, he's like a weighted blanket. He's very calming.
I got an Australian Shepherd. She is now 8 months old.
Well, puppies.
Nobody's sleeping. Christoph Guger, g.tec, thank you so much for coming on the show. Dr. Marie Swingle, and of course, Jay Gunkelman. Great episode of the NeuroNoodle Network podcast.
The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.